Well, I'm going to go ahead and start talking now, and we'll see if it shows up on the audio. We were after hours with the great Jared George, and we had a good stream, a great stream yesterday, actually, going free. We shared so many uh, examples of folks who are having great victories in their lives, wonderful, positive things for themselves, for those themselves personally, having something to live for, but then also for the people that they are helping. So we had a gentleman who is helping a woman, and she's now talking about this woman, how she doesn't feel as much anxiety, she doesn't feel the white guilt as strongly anymore. Her and her boyfriend are stopping all of the conversations, the pointless conversations about politics. They're going to instead think about having a family. And then of course we had one of the most heartwarming things we've ever seen, which is this young child, this little girl, who, in stark contrast, I couldn't stop thinking about this today, ladies and gentlemen, not for 1 minute, just with me all day long. The stark contrast between this little girl whose mother is in our community. She's going free herself. She's teaching her daughter to also go free, teaching her daughter to serve White Wellbeing. And as I tell everyone, children, all children want to belong to a people. All children get to belong to a people. All children get to be proud of their people, except for white children. And what a stark contrast between this little girl who is being offered this path of love and beauty and happiness by way of her people, the traditions, everything that we've accomplished, feeling noble and glorious about who she is and what is pumping through her, that biospirit, the magic that is within her, instead of this shroud of this white guilt that we're forced to wear, this penitence. So contrasting her with the little white girl on the train in the UK for me all day long, thinking about that wretched, poor little girl, white girl, probably around the same age, on the subway train, screaming and crying, throwing a tantrum, begging her mother to not have to be white for the totality of her life, hating herself, rending her clothing because of this, because of the infection of anti-whiteism, because of the MPs. This little girl here in the States, whose mother is going free, who's teaching the little girl to serve white well-being, to feel proud about who she is, to believe that there is a true magic and genuine innocence and purity inside of her that comes to her from this great force in the past, sits down of her own volition. Her mother is ill, has the flu, and this little girl sits down of her own volition and writes a note to her mother to help make her feel better. I hope you feel better, mommy. And thank you so, multiple letter O's, so much for teaching me white well-being. I love you. And then passes that on. What is happening in that little girl's heart? That heart is singing with joy. What is happening with that white little girl's heart over across the pond in the UK on the subway, on that train, where she screams and cries? Do you think it's only in public where she's screaming and crying about how much she hates herself, how much she hates being white? Because why? Because the TV tells her she's evil, because she belongs to an evil people. Whatever she's able to read so far, when she looks in the little books, it's the non-white children that are drawn behaving properly, the white children misbehaving. All things interesting about non-white children, all interesting histories, all interesting cultures, all interesting cuisine and dance, etc. when it comes to non-white children. But for her little white girl, nothing interesting, nothing good, wanting in every respect, because a child knows you cannot have something special without it being elevated above something else. So every time a little white child hears that a non-white group is special, they have a special this and a special that, a special history and a special holiday and a special cuisine, and all of these things are so wonderful. The white child is hearing that they are less, that their people are less. And that's what's happening to that little girl. So I go back to that question. Do you think only in public does she scream and cry about that blackness, that gaping hole in her chest? Hell no. She is home in the silence of her thoughts, in her bedroom, in the bathroom, climbing even into the closet to hide from the world with that self-hate that the anti-whites have inflicted on her. And what's it going to be, ladies and gentlemen? What are you going to have for your sons and daughters? What are you going to have for your nieces and nephews, for your grandchildren? What's it going to be? Is it going to be the little white girl across the pond, or if you're in the UK, right in your neighborhood, that where she hates herself because she comes and has been taught that she believes that she is from an evil people? Or is it going to be the little white girl over here in the States whose mother is going free and teaching her little white daughter to love herself, love our people, love that magic that pumps through her veins? What's it going to be for you? The little love note that the little daughter writes for you so that you have something to cheer your spirits, or the suicide note written by the little girl who hates herself and is going to give out her final words about how much she does hate herself and her people before she white flights into oblivion? What will it be for your children? What's it going to be for all the white children whose lives we can touch? So I'm going to bring Jared George, and we're going to talk about our great experience. We had a great time over on Millennium Yule. And if you have any questions, you can tag us on, I think Jared's probably only watching the No White Guilt channel, so tag him over there. I can see both. And Seaver, thank you. I will get entropy up in just one moment. But you can also tag me. So you can tag me as No White Guilt. You can also tag me as Gardening with NWG. I'll see it on both. And then, of course, all of your options for super chatting are available. As always, look down into the description. Everyone who super chats will be read. And if you do get an opportunity, please watch this stream by way of our website, which is theafterparty.tv. We want to make sure that you all know where that is, so that if anything happens, you know exactly where to go and you're comfortable going there to find us and the shows that we will continue to produce, irrespective of the anti-white efforts, certainly coming into 2020 in the totality of this coming decade. So happy New Year, happy new decade. And Jared George, how are you doing, brother?
Should I be watching on the gardening channel as well?
If you can have both of them up, I don't know if that's going to be too much.
I don't want. No, it's okay. I don't want to make the people over on the gardening channel feel like I'm neglecting them.
Oh, I see. Well, we have
sorry,
Michael over there.
I don't know if there's a different crowd that the gardening channel attracts. If they're like regulars that prefer gardening with NWG for these streams.
There are a few, I think, that
maybe I'm about to go over and get reamed out. It's a select few. It's kind of like the people that want special edition, collector's edition kind of things. It's like there's a community. They go to gardening.
That's right.
I'm afraid what I'm going to see over here. Hello. I'm going to say hello and welcome me, guys.
Say hello to the community over there.
I've done that. I've been on it, but I realized I haven't been over there for the last few streams. So here we are. Is my audio still okay? Because
your audio is okay. We had a little bit of a robot from you for a minute there, but
that must be the connection. Because I have a new setup. I got this mic arm. I might have to reposition it. This is a good position, but it's in the camera a little bit, in the shot right here, the arm.
Right.
But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing.
That might even be the exact same one that I have. I can't tell. Or at least very similar. That's we bought them at the same time.
We are vertical neighbors. He's right upstairs from me, folks. If you remember our Philosophicat episode, the end of our Philosophicat episode from April,
which was magnificent. Yes. We have Mrs. Jess Horst in here right away with a $9.99 super chat. To the decade where we reclaim our destiny, the great awakening. We slumber no more. Happy New Year to all our good folks, NWG. Well, thank you so much, my dear lady. Thank you for being here as always. Your kind words.
New Year's Eve.
What's that, brother?
It is New Year's Eve. Yeah.
It is indeed. Well, I guess
that. But we're freewheeling tonight. It's almost more like it's late night somewhere, but we're just on camera. So we don't really have an agenda. So ask things and write things in the chat. We're counting on you. We're going to put pressure on you, our chat community, to actually turn this into something. We'll weave it. What was a good...
Well, we did.
A woman, I heard a good phrase recently. I had to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear.
Oh, yeah. That's a very common phrase down here.
Yeah, I hadn't heard it in a while, but it's a good one.
It is indeed. I was just looking up. There was that. What was that piece of news? Oh, I know where I found it. It was over here. It was the church down in Texas where there was a shooter had entered, and maybe we can have some of the folks in the chat fill us in. And a shooter had entered the church. What day was this, folks? Do you know what day it was that this happened? It happened just recently, and
Might have been yesterday.
might have been. Anyhow, 5 people in the church were carrying and weapons, and one of them happened to be. Talk about the bad luck for the individual who wanted to murder people there. He or she, I don't know who the assailant was, dead or alive at this point, I don't know, but entered the church where there was a guy who has owned firearms companies for the totality of his life, firearms shooting classes. This guy has given everything. And I saw a brief video. I'm sure it's going to be pulled, but all that I saw on the video was a single shot. So apparently this guy, late 60s or something of this nature, good old boy, down home, probably has put down several million rounds downrange. And so this guy comes in to murder folks. And this was definitely not the church to vex in this way, because it might have been a one shot, one kill scenario. I don't know. Perhaps people
you don't do that in Texas. You don't do that anywhere. And it's not something we should make light of course, but you definitely don't do that in Texas. And yeah, someone saying in the chat, and I saw something about this, even an old woman pulled out her piece from her purse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's Texas, baby.
Yeah, well, it ended up being fun, but I think the other 4 were a bit late. I think the assailant was already pushing daisies from a pine box by the time, if he lived, if he didn't live, but by the time they got their pieces out, he was already on the floor inside the church there, thanks to this guy who, by the way, of course, we embrace here in Service to White Wellbeing everyone who wants to serve White Wellbeing, and we absolutely do not separate or parse groups according to age or anything of that nature, as we see elsewhere, where they'll mock this age group or that age group. This guy happened to be a member of that older age group, that all of these twits, all of these people who are still wet behind the ears, mock these older folks. And there are as many of these folks who are young who are as anti-white and benighted as these old folks. So this is just some people who can't take the responsibility and make change happen. They want to just blame everybody and then squat on their asses. That's all they want to do. So, but that's not what we do here. We take the responsibility and the burden on ourselves to make change in the world, and that's why we are growing this community and putting our best foot forward every day to do something that's actually productive. And I was thinking about this today, actually, Jared, and get your thoughts on it. But we had some questions about this, the whole seceding questions yesterday that I spoke to, and these building, redoubts and communities of these sorts of things. And I was thinking, that ultimately is also another, and I guess I've hit on this point before in the past, but it's just another way to be a do-nothing. It's another way to say, we've got to build this grand thing, and until we have all of these elements that we need to build this grand thing, well, then I can just sit around and talk about action rather than actually engage in action. And so these are the wise asses who will show up and say, well, all you're doing is talking. Well, that's all they're doing. Clearly, we're not only doing talking. We are producing lives, saving lives, bringing these little girls into this love of their people. She's gonna build a wonderful family. Every day of her life that is a smile on her face is because of the work that we are doing. So we're actually doing things. Those people who are talking about all of these crazy notions that are impossible right now, they are just talking. They're the ones who are just talking, not actually doing anything. If you are talking about philosophy, you're talking about politics, you're talking about building a castle to hide up inside of when civilization crumbles, and somehow you'll survive inside of all of that. That's all just talking. You're not actually doing anything. If you're talking about action, you're still just talking. I mean, so think of just the impudence of these little bitches that want to come around and say, well, you're just talking. We need to be talking about doing all these other action-oriented things. No, if you want something action-oriented, ladies and gentlemen, many people are already doing it. And by the way, somebody had written last week and said that they were interested in some flyers. They wanted to translate some of these flyers that John had produced. Write me, and I will mail you one, or I will take a picture and I will direct message you a photograph of it. I'm not going to hold them up here in front of the camera, because then what happens is there's a knock on my door next week from the Fairfax County Sheriff's saying, well, the sheriff's over in Timbuktu found some of these, so you're obviously the one who's responsible, and here's your $2,000 fine. So I'm not going to be able to show them on the camera here, but if you want to copy it and translate it into whatever language, where you are, reach out to me. I will send you the version that John made, either physical version or electronic version. And folks, I have many thousands more of them. I mean, they're over this is not even John produced 10,000 of these on his own dollars. God bless him. That's action, ladies and gentlemen. All the stuff that John is doing and everybody else passing these things out, that's actually doing things, bringing people to this service to White Wellbeing. I have many of these. If you want to distribute these to legal areas where you can distribute these without fine or otherwise, reach out to me, and I will ship them to you on my dollar. John has already made them all and shipped them to me on his dollar. So it's practically all been done for you. All you have to do is get some exercise and pass these things out. But Jared, what are your thoughts on these people who talk about action and who believe that talking about action is somehow action?
Well, I think you summed it up by saying they're just talking. There's really not much more to say about that. I'm up here to facilitate cultural activities. I did the contest this year with Porridge. I got up here to start doing more creative work, sharing more creative work that I do, communicate things that I felt needed to be out there. I know we have people doing shows, but there are different perspectives that are needed and different personalities that will connect with different kinds of people out there. So as I said on Millennial, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we think of this as innately political.
Mm-hmm.
There's a political element to it, but just because you're a guy with a YouTube channel, or increasingly other platforms, because we know we can't be relying on YouTube. And someone in the chat asked about the afterparty.tv. We'll get it up in a minute. Just we have to get Entropy up and running. But this is a culture includes, but is not limited to politics. So just because you're someone who, let's say, I began to say has a YouTube channel, but what I should really say is just has a public presence whatsoever, to then get it put back upon you. Well, what's your plan A to Z to save Western civilization? As if anyone up here there is a barrier to entry, and hopefully, the people who you're spending your precious attention on are people who are edifying your life. And if you're here tonight, maybe we're among those. But imagine the barrier to entry is you have to have a perfect plan and a political system worked out and a constitution written and all these things. Now, there are people who are focusing on legal systems. There are people who are focusing on, okay, how do we synthesize different elements from our political history and structures that might now work for us, given the realities of the world we're in now today. But not all of us can do all those things. So I'm not up here to give you political order, and not everyone who does this is. I'm up here to be really participating in and creating culture. And that's who I've always been. That personality thing. When I was younger, I was making media projects and music, and now it just has more of a direction with this. It's going to be in the context of all of this. So I'm not. That's not even really where my head is. And we've spoken about this before, and I don't want to belabor it, but you never know who's new, or maybe someone who's in our audience but just hasn't heard us talk about it in the past. It's not as if we're not advocating for preparing yourself, for being more self-sufficient, for weaning yourself off of the system. No one here is saying not to do that. But if it crosses over into that realm of just, it becomes this fetishization where you're just talking about your plans for your cabin in the mountains, and then anyone else that doesn't talk about that with the same focus that you do somehow doesn't get it or is even a subversive element, that is what needs to be called out. I think people, and I'm open to hearing, why that stuff is important. And again, in a general sense, we both support being able to be more self-sustaining and off the grid, everything I just said. But anything that's too narrow, I get a little suspicious over. And I'm not saying that the person necessarily who's advocating for something narrow is always is subversive, is consciously subversive. They just might not be as developed or balanced or in this long enough to have that wider perspective. And that's okay. That's all right if they come around a little bit more. But it kind of relates, Jason, and I'd like to talk about this and just get back and forth and see what the chat thinks and see where it all goes. But you mentioned when you were talking about the church shooting, you mentioned the boomer thing is what you were alluding to, and how we don't really get into that on this show. And yeah, when you think about it, there's no reason for these divisions. We're already divided enough. I know it's interesting and somewhat inevitable that thinking people will tend to categorize, and they'll want to look at, well, how does this category different from that category? How do the boomers differ from Gen X, differ from this? And it might be interesting to kind of think about the different characteristics and personalities of the generations and how they grew up and how that manifests in kind of a zeitgeist for each generation. I'm a thinking person. I understand that there's a certain curiosity in being drawn into exercises like that. But we really have to exercise self-awareness so as to not let what might be just interesting observations that might give us a little more acute perception on things. We have to watch that doesn't cross over a threshold into something that just becomes these little mini wars and sectarian battles. So as much as I'm interested in that stuff, I think for me personally, just to talk about it personally, the way I'm built is, and this is a funny thing that it might be funny to our detractors or people that think that we are obsessed with race and things like that, is I'm not the kind of person who wants to just go along with, when I see everyone talking about, oh, boomer this and boomer that, and it's a trend, my first reaction is to not go along with it. My reaction is always just to take a step back and say, well, when I see a herding kind of mentality, like, why are these people herding? Herd. And actually, a lot of people that are herding with a D are hurting, H-U-R-T. They're trying to make this box of this world to understand things, and maybe they have past pains and they're trying to justify them. But anything like that, where I start to see, oh, boomers, oh, femcells, all this stuff. I just personally, I have a resistance to using that kind of language and getting in on that. And it's like, oh, it's kind of a shortcut to thinking. It's a shorthand, and it's just a herd. It's another herd kind of thing. You could get lost in the details too. Everything's a balance. But I think our modernity, and we all have our criticism of modernity, right? One of the biggest losses from modernity, and I see this even in small examples of interpersonal interactions just out in the world, is a loss of nuance. Now, we're people who are trying to start something new. We're trying to do something different and take a turn from the modern world. So why do we want to get into this thinking that is not nuanced, that is not sophisticated, that is lowbrow? Aren't we supposed to be the people that are trying to make a turn away from that?
Yeah, precisely. And that is that is one of the things that you said it so well on other shows about that we are in a state where, first of all, we are a people that are able to appreciate nuance, but we're in a state where we have to appreciate nuance. And you have too many who want to, and of course, I think the reason why is lethargy. I think it's wanton, dilatory tactics. They don't want to have to confront. And isn't this the case with everybody when it comes to almost anything? And it's something that you have to overcome. You've got to, I don't know, fix the plumbing in that bathroom where the pipe broke, and then the person just puts it off and puts it off. Because I'll tell you what I do, folks, is that when something has to be done, if you put it off, and this is just, over the years, I figured this was a superior path, and I have found it to be so. If you put it off, it's like this eidolon. It's just haunting you and forever telling you what an idiot and loser you are for not doing the damn thing that has to be done. So the only way to deal with the eidolon, the only way to do it could be I guess to use didn't mean to use like a ghost. So to use another rare is a bête noire, this beast that opposes you and you hate it and you don't want to deal with it. You have this, it can become that for you, this bête noire, and you can't escape it. The best thing to do that I have found, what works for me all of the time, is just to immediately do it. Now, it might mean the immediately doing it might mean that you immediately jot the note, okay, I'm going to do this next because I'm in the middle of doing something. But you immediately attend to it so that you don't have to do it anymore. The easiest way to have a break during the day is to get everything done that you have to do tomorrow. So that is how you win. You're not going to win and let me just tell you this, it's certainly there are a great many good folks that are hearing this message. They absolutely agree. The problem is that there are these misleaders, these folks who want to prop themselves up and give advice to others. And then they give them advice that undermines our efforts to recapture our destiny. And any sort of advice that is going to have you sit on your hands, irrespective of what the goal might be, is a losing strategy. So if it is advice that wants to complain, if when you reduce it, if it's just about complaining about this sect of our people based on a religion, or this sect based on that age group, or this sect based on that region, or that country's name, or whatever it might be, those are all just ways to say you're a loser, you're not going to move forward, you want to make excuses to sit on your ass rather than getting out and doing the things that need to be done. And another thing that such people do is they'll come and criticize endlessly people who are actually accomplishing things. Who in their right mind at this point could question the good work that we're doing here, the growth that we are making? This has not, I've been in the white positive sphere for decades. There has never been anything like this. There have never been such heroes as like there are here tonight, who are actually doing things. There have always been lots of people, bright people, smart people, courageous people, good people too. But there have been far more people who have been drunk, absolutely maudlin on these ideas and strategies and the like that just get them to do nothing. It gives them excuses to do nothing ultimately. Things like, well, before we are going to accomplish this enormous thing that's impossible, can't be done, before we do that, we've got to write out this really complicated, and got to draw a proper flag, and we got to write out this, this booklet of X, A to Z for our views. And then they're going to sit around a table, no one who cares who they are, no power, no community. I mean, I asked a good gentleman today, and he was posing an honest, and I welcome all honest disagreement and questions. And on one of the threads I saw, I think it was today, might have been last night, kind of runs together when you only sleep a handful of hours. But the gentleman asked, where in history don't we need to have a fortified region to preserve ourselves? And of course, this is jumping the shark. It is jumping the rails of where we are today. Where on planet Earth today does a people survive without having nuclear weapons or some other country protecting them that has nuclear weapons? So we got to get to work on nuclear weapons. You can see when you stretch it out to the absurdity of the line of thinking, where it actually ends up, that it ends up in something being so ridiculous and a non-starter that, so I just wrote back and said, where in history has there ever been a fortified region without a people? We don't have a people yet. good sir, with your disagreement. We don't have a people. And where has there been a people without an ideology that wed them together? And now and today, as because something like this has never gone before in human history, there has never been an ideology that is corrosive like anti-whiteism, that eats a people out from its inside. So there has never been a need for a people to have an ideology that immunizes itself against that sort of attack. There will be, if we're going to survive in the future, there will be a need for that, for there to be a people to exist. So then you need that ideology, you need that spread to the I guess the prospects. Then those people come, those individuals come together and form a people, and then you can begin to do all of these other things. And then at somewhere out in the distant future, you're able to build a fortified region that can somehow militarily take on the United States and all of the other superpowers of the world. But let me just, we had a couple super chats come in. I want to make sure to read those. We also had the Nomads, White Guilt, love your Snow Shadow poem reading, Jason. Really sense a second career for you. Thank you so much for that. But please, all the thanks goes to
books on tape.
Yeah, all the thanks goes to Snow Shadow. The poem was, I was struggling every moment of reading that poem to make it to come close to what it deserved. So the poem is the power, and then ultimately Poseidon's music and the imagery that he added. What a magnificent thing. Another great example of how what we are doing is actually changing. The service to white well-being is actually changing the world, is bringing people in. This is going to touch a great many people's hearts, and this is people from different parts of the globe participated in this collaboration.
I'm about that. So she reached out to you in Poseidon and asked you to read it and him to do music and visuals. Was it an all original thing, or was it taken from past clips?
No, it's all original. What happened was she wrote this this poem, and she had not read any any of her poetry. She had, I don't know how many poems she had actually finished and were available.
She's one of the ones in Last Message to the West as well. She has a video in Last Message to the West.
Right. So she did she had written this, and I read it. I was very moved, as it is extremely moving. And she said, I wrote to her, I said, this is magnificent. Please continue with these talents that you have to serve white well-being with them. We will be most grateful, and you'll be doing something really valuable with your talents in life. And she said, sure, but I'm not going to read them. I don't like the sound of my voice, or something along these lines. If I'm not remembering correctly exactly the communication, I apologize, and she can correct me. But it was something along that line. And I said, I know the feeling. Most of us hate the sound of our voice, at least initially, and then you get used to the drone of yourself.
I could see people in the chat saying, Jared, Jason, you guys sure don't seem like you hate the sounds of your own voice.
Well, yes, exactly.
It is weird hearing your own voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said, I'm sure your voice is, I'm sure you have a lovely voice. It would sound better coming from you. So really, please think about reading your own poetry. But I will read this one. It's so moving, and it's the first one I saw. I don't know if it's the first one she made public, but it's the first one I saw. I said, this is really something. I will absolutely read it. Well, she decided to take the bull by the horns. This is a great example, ladies and gentlemen, of the difference between saying we need a fortified state somewhere, a mountain redoubt, and that being talking about action that doesn't actually take place, and actual action. This little lady, fellas out there who are talking about, who are blowing their chests up, and they get those invisible lat muscles, and they walk with their arms real wide. Listen, fellas, this little lady got out there, and she's changing the lives of who knows how many people she's going to end up touching before she leaves this world, with a life far more valuable than the one you're living thus far. You can change that, though. You can get on the path to actually doing good for our people, serving white well-being. She might end up touching millions with her works in the end. And maybe some of those people are going to be the ones who end up holding the offices in a government for our people in the future. You never know. So anyhow, she decided to take the bull by the horns, and amazing. She read these poems. Her voice is magnificent. Everybody loves her works. But what happened was, I was going to do the reading right away, but I started having this issue with my vocal cords. And so it just got put off and postponed. I didn't want to produce a reading of it that was somehow, I knew it was going to be a challenge to try to really honor what she had created there. So I just kept getting postponed until finally I felt strong enough to give it a go. And while I was doing that, I wrote her, I said, okay, look, I'm reading this now. And she said, do you think, I remember I said, I don't want to put visuals to this because I don't want to in any way detract from the power and beauty of your poetry. So I'm thinking about, I'll just leave the screen blank. It'll be me reading your magnificent poem. And she came back and said Poseidon had mentioned to her that he would put visuals and music to videos and things, and they could collab some. And do I think that he would do it for this case? And I thought, yeah, nothing. We can't hurt but to ask the great sea god himself. And we did. And of course, he said, absolutely. Even though this is another thing you learn when you're out in corporate America. No, it's everywhere actually. The person who has nothing to do, if you need them to do something, they won't get done. If the person who is busy and they can just fit you in, it'll get done then. So Poseidon, busy out of his mind, 10 arms, 10 things going different directions at one time, and says, yes, I'll fit that in. Sure enough, in no time, a number of days, it's produced, and it's absolutely magnificent. It's a splendid job. And
action begets action. That is interesting, isn't that?
It's precisely. But we had, let's see, we got the great Elaine Sabatino was able to make it tonight. The great Irish Rose, who made our video of us dancing to Feliz Navidad.
Oh,
great to see
Irish
you.
Rose, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Jennifer is here. She's giving some information about the boomer, who, by the way, I just put this together, I guess late to the party maybe. He's a boomer, and he was booming from the back of the church. One shot to the head, I guess. And Jennifer says she believes he's a former law enforcement as well. So if he actually shot this person, because Watch Rider says with some information that the shooter was milliseconds from opening fire and on the person that was at the altar, and this was a shot to the head. I'm going to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Hitting a target as small as a human head, moving down an aisle, the distance this guy was from, an amazing shot.
30 feet, he said?
Is that what it is? An amazing shot.
30 feet, yeah.
I don't care how old he is. And by the way, this is another thing. If you've ever watched, for all of these young folks who want to blame someone so that they can sit on their hands and do nothing, go watch the speed draw competitions. See if you can find somebody who can even come close to competing who isn't like under 60. They pull out a 6-shooter where you have to pull the hammer back each time, and they get off like 3-4 rounds, throwing the hammer back before the human eye can blink once. So that is the reaction time of these old farts, or whatever you guys want to call them. I would happily have this old guy with me if I ended up in a hot situation. So what else do we have here? William asked me something about friends loitering around a convenience store and laughing at you. I didn't see what else you wrote there, but we have, where did it go? Where did my screen go? We have some super chats. White Pride, thank you so much. Super chatting 20 Danish Corona. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Didn't write anything, but this, as I say, saying a lot with those Danish krona to those anti-whites who have shown up to try to downvote this video.
Danish krona is perhaps the most delicious sounding currency.
It is indeed.
Maybe it reminds me of a Danish, like a cheese Danish, or like a Kreller. But there's something about, I know it's crown, and I think it's called kronar in Swedish and Norwegian too. There's something about Danish krona.
It does sound.
It sounds like it's
delicious. Yes,
yeah. It does. Your currency sounds delicious.
Jared wants to eat your currency. That's how much he.
That sounds very suggestive.
We also, I guess. I was going to say
to invest. I'd like you to
think about how petty and pathetic these anti-whites are, who have come and voted down the video. What absolute losers we are!
We never have this many downvotes.
We are choked. YouTube is not sharing these videos as they should be shared, and these anti-whites think they're going to come and they're going to influence things. They're going to influence YouTube. Too bad. The anti-white walruses with their blue hair and whatever else problems they have at YouTube are not sharing these things already, and you're definitely not going to hurt our feelings with a downvote. I mean, go back to wondering what gender you are. We have Casey with a super chat, $4.99. This is here on YouTube as well. And writing, start new job on Thursday, making most money in my career. Spent 2019 working on my physical and mental health. New decade, White Wellbeing starts locally. There you go. Amen to
Beautiful.
that.
Well said.
Yes, indeed. That is action oriented. We are making change. Casey's going to make sure that there are more white little girls and white little boys out there writing love notes to their parents saying, thank you for giving me a people, for giving me something to be proud about. Thank you so much for that, Casey. And I'll check these other platforms to see if anything has come up anywhere else. But Jared, if you've seen anything else in the chat that you want to respond to, anything more about the shooter, the savior guy was, according to RT, former FBI. Okay. And what does Dan say? I think I saw one of those speed draw guys. Oh, okay. On Ripley's Believe It or Not. They are insanely fast. They are, Dan. And isn't it remarkable that they are all senior citizens? I mean, every time I see those, I'm wondering, where's the 20-year-old guy that is supposed to have the lightning fast? And I'm not saying they don't. Relative to seniors, yes, your reaction time wanes with age, but it's certainly not the case for everyone. Where are the
technique and experience make up for that?
Well, yes, indeed. And this buzzer goes off. They have to get this gun out of the holster and get these rounds off into a target. So it's not like you can just randomly shoot them. But somebody had a video.
Birds falling.
Right. Birds are falling from this. The trash guy falls over by the curb. Somebody had a video up on Instagram that I saw of a guy, certainly not a young man, not a senior citizen, but definitely not a young man, closer to being a senior citizen than a young man. And the guy is in the middle of 4 targets, and he gets his, I don't know what it is. It's probably some sort of Glock, gets the Glock out and shoots all 4 directions faster than you could blink. So he could have 4 people coming in on him at one moment. He could hit them all center mass before a human eye could blink. So these are the kind of people. We're not turning anybody away here in service to white well-being. You could have a unicorn horn off the top of your head, and if you want to serve white well-being, you are welcome, my friends. So Greek guy, especially if you're that good of a shot, we will love you. Any specific questions for Jared and the work that he's doing, folks? Maybe
millennial, I'd like to say.
Yes, anything from JK160 says also thinks that guy was FBI. Nala says this is a wonderful story. I don't know which one's wonderful, the little girl or the shooter at the church. Yeah, I was going to say both.
But yeah, this is, like we said, this is impromptu, just New Year's Eve, hanging out. We know the after party, we know that after hours, like what we're doing tonight, is a little different than the after party. But sometimes we have a guest or we're focusing on a certain thing that happened. But tonight it's really just a fun hangout. We had nothing preconceived before coming on. But as I said a moment ago, if any of you watched Millennial and had any feedback or questions from it, we'd definitely love that, since that happened recently, a couple of nights ago on Saturday. But Jason, you said something interesting a little while ago where, not that this is surprising to me after all the work we do together, but if you could whittle it down in a simple phrase, it's your focus is building a people first prior to these questions. Now, out there in the discourse, and I said this a little bit earlier about there's limits on trying to create the perfect political order, but discussions about them, I go back and forth with the utility of them. I was speaking of Millennial, this is what I'm getting at. I've only begun listening to more of them now that we've been on. It just so happened I didn't really want to hear other people's opinions on what the last decade was about and what the next decade's going to be in the future. So I only listened to little bits here and there, but I didn't listen to anything at length, and I didn't want to catch too much about other people's opinions. I wanted to keep my own fresh. I don't know if what I said had been said by 10 other people or if there was anything original about it, but I at least wanted to remain true to my initial reactions when Woes posed that question to us, as he did everybody, when he emailed about the show. We knew that a big part of it wanted to be about looking back on the last decade, looking forward to the next one. So only now, over this last weekend, have I begun listening to more of them. And of course, I've focused on some of our friends and colleagues at first. And there are some extraordinary episodes. Philosophicat was great. And speaking of nuance, like I said in the beginning, and I know she got some flack for some things, they talked a lot about the relations between the sexes. And that's always going to bring some controversy and some thoughts, but a lot of nuance, a lot of wisdom from her, and also Semiagog. So it was interesting to listen to both of them. It reminds me how proud I am to be working with people like this and able to learn from and with people like this. But Oliver Semiagog did say something interesting, and it was the idea that if we don't have any definition of a civic order to move towards, then that's a vacuum. And we all know that other forces rush in to fill vacuums and will try to take over a narrative or a perspective that could very well confuse some of our people and get them off track. So as they're coming into more of an awareness that they are a people, you might have charlatans and snake oil salesmen trying to wed their identity of their European heritage and the various ethnicities therein with, well, obviously this political order, this philosophy is the one that best encapsulates what we are and who we are. So he didn't have, well, I'm not done listening to that millennial, but I'm pretty sure he admittedly didn't have a prescription. He doesn't have something worked out where he has a political order. We're going to take from this and this bit of history, and now this is perfect. And I don't think Oliver would say there's one political order. He was actually saying, now that I think of it, there's not one political order that's going to work for all white people worldwide. And he had thought that if anyone proposes that, that is dangerous too, because if there's one central command and there's one government, then all that has to happen is that be infiltrated or that be compromised, and then a lot of dominoes will fall in its wake, and it won't be good for us. So I think all of us know that there has to be a loose federation, and we want to keep the beautiful hues of our different ethnicities around the world and how they express in different environments around the world. But his point was still that we can't say nothing. We can't let that space and that question mark just hang there in terms of philosophies and political orders and ways of organizing societies, lest, as I said, other things will fill the vacuum. So I don't know if that's kind of a big topic and maybe not something that we're going to get to all of tonight. But it did have me, I thought of what Oliver said, Jason, as you were mentioning this whole thing, because my first instinct too is, our crisis right now is one of identity and self-confidence. And a lot of what I do is to try to hold a mirror back up to us as I learn more about who we are. I have an instinct for it, but now I'm trying to learn more of the details and express that in some of the work I do, give us back to ourselves, as I sometimes say.
Mm-hmm.
But Oliver made some sense that it can't only be white identity and nothing else. Those other considerations of, well, the practical things, the nuts and bolts things of how that expresses. And I know sometimes it feels like we're putting the cart before the horse, but the other side of that coin is, well, if we don't come up with some kind of definitions and directions, someone else is going to.
Well, I think that there's such a, how can I put it? Well, DB Cooper is here. Let me see what he has to say. I sent you one through, I guess this is a super chat. I sent you one through coffee on this channel. Have a happy new year. So I'll look for that, brother. If you're still here, did you just send it? Is this your question about which is more important, DB? Because that's a relevant question, and I will, because we did just receive a super chat then, right on that topic. But it is seductive, I guess, in a way to want to outline this, and it's really one of these pitfalls when you're thinking about. We'll just keep it on this subject. I won't give an example to run parallel. But when people sit down and they say, okay, what are we going to do as a, okay, that is DB Cooper's. When people sit down and they say, what are we going to do about the future? How are we going to recapture our people? Regrettably, the first place they look is to the old forms, the old methods of getting from where folks were to where they ended up. And then they immediately try to model it to our present scenario. And there are the number of errors that are made. I've sat down with people over the years, and they were honest. They were honest in their commitment. They were people with integrity. So I believed that, and it was true that they actually wanted to achieve these things, these grand things. Like, what we have to do is we have to develop this economy that people will embrace. And then once we have this better economy, and we'll tell them about this better economy, and then we'll tell them about this better government, or to be a different group of guys will say it's the government. But I've sat down with some of these folks, and I've broken it down for them. And I don't do that anymore. I haven't done it in a long time. The reason why is because they are committing such an egregious error in planning, in I don't know how, I don't want to insult them, but just to say thinking. And that is that they have supplanted reality, all of the data points of reality, with their imagination. And I know that this is happening when I begin to question them on it. Because when I say, well, what about this element here in your plan for a grand economy or whatever? What if this? And then they come back with an imaginary scenario that there could be no support, no logical, I guess, support structure of how A could go to B to C. No, it's just, this is my fantasy world. And in my fantasy world, if X happens, then Y will automatically happen. Well, why does Y happen? No, it's just my fantasy world. Y happens. So it was probably the last time I ever had such a discussion. I did it on a thread. And it had been years since having one. I did it on a thread so that this was like 2 years ago on one of my videos, so that others could see exactly what I was talking about. I said to the guy, I said, look, I'll discuss this with you, but I don't discuss these sorts of things because, and like I just shared with you all. And then I walked through it with him, and he did exactly what they always do. We cannot model human ingenuity. We cannot predict. If people could predict the way people spend their whole careers, their whole education, their whole careers working in studying the stock market, studying trading and this sort of thing. They can't see 2 days out. Do you really think that there's going to be somebody who can see for the movements of people's, the dynamism of humanity, the struggles and warfare and all of that goes into the human existence? Do you really think they're going to be able to construct something and say, here is the shining city on the hill that will make all things work perfect? And if they could do that, they would know where Apple stock was going to be next month, and they would be millionaires. They wouldn't be talking to us. If they could do something like that, they would know every stock that was going to skyrocket, exactly why it was going to skyrocket, and they would not be selling this childishness to us.
So what about Oliver's question about the vacuum?
Well, I don't think there is a vacuum by saying what we say here, that we know that there is a cycle in humanity, that we've seen it repeat throughout all of humanity. Societies go through it. The reason why the society goes through it is because the animal that composes the society is the cyclical thing that's causing the cycles through the civilizations. That's why people think it's outside of us or I don't know, in the ether or something. It's in us. That's why it happens in industry, it happens in countries, it happens in clubs, it happens everywhere, and to varying levels and varying degrees and varying levels of happiness and sadness as a consequence. Since we know there's this cyclical nature to the human animal, and the one that matters to us, of course, is the only one on the planet that's not cared for, and that's Western kind. We know that we now have to approach a 200 IQ approach to governance and economy is to say, and this is, we don't need to go further than this, because going further than this is really just playing club. But we know that there needs to be governance and economy that will cycle with the peoples, so that we don't have to have ups and downs that ruin and cause misery on one end and in one group of our community, and happiness on another. We need to develop a system that will do this. When will we develop? That's what needs to be done. When will we develop such a system? Once we recapture our destiny and we have the levers of control, and we can actually implement, we can actually think about these things, we can actually bring our brightest members, we can do the, even if somebody in the white positive sphere today was some sort of mega genius and spent his or her whole life studying the economy and thought they had the perfect plan. They don't have all of the data that is accessible at the level of governance. They don't know all of this. Is why I say, with all of these people who used to, they would go on and have these debates about this geopolitics, that. Really, where are you getting your info from? All of their info, and this is something that just endlessly is humorous to me. They'll say, "Oh, I don't get when I discuss these geopolitics, I don't get my info from this controlled media here in the United States or in the UK. And no, I get it from Vietnam. I get it from over here. I get it from over there," as though they are not controlling very carefully the information that's being shared with their populations in a way that benefits the controlling entities in those governments. So that's exactly what's happening. So all of their prognostications and deductions and et cetera are just immensely flawed from the moment they open their mouth, because all we can really know is what the human animal wants, what the human animal will do, when the human animal is going to be rapacious and have no reins or no bit of morality or ethic. And that's how it is at the highest level, ladies and gentlemen, when it's just law of the jungle and they're going at each other. All of the safety and security is illusory and can in the larger scheme, even though you live your whole life here and in the cradle of Western civilization, in the greater scheme of things, it's very temporary. It recurs. It's not incessant. And so it's a brief look at history. We'll be able to say that. So I don't mind if somebody wants to have a little bit of chat about geopolitics and just throw around some ideas for fun, rather than watching sports ball or something like this. Or somebody wants to sit down and exercise their intelligence, exercise their brains by contemplating a governmental structure, contemplating maybe somebody, economic structure, somebody who contemplates these things today. These ideas will serve as some of the seeds for what our people do once we recapture our destiny. We have all of the information of what actually goes on in the world, and we then have the power to actually make things happen. Really, if somebody wants to do that, more power to them. It's better than watching sports ball. The big difference is, though, is that going out to our people and saying, here is, average white guy, average white woman, normal sensibilities. Your life is miserable. You're losing your job. Your salaries are stagnant. You're standing on the picket line. Your child can't get medicine. You're having to flee your neighborhood. What we need to be talking about is a new economy. What we need to be talking about is a new system of government. And what ends up happening is these people, they can be bamboozled. They can think, that's right, that's what we need to talk about. And I know this, we all know this, because look how easy it is for a politician to do this to our people. They'll say, well, we need this brand new system. And these are people that actually will have an opportunity to get into a system and maybe wreck it even worse than it is. But people will lend their ears to this sort of thing. And then what happens? They become stagnant. They stop moving. They stop engaging. They give up. And what did the communists do? When you look back at the growth of communism, they didn't go to each person who they brought into communism and said, we have to spread this. They teach them all about exactly what the economy will look like and exactly what the government will look like. And we have to make this happen. And then have these people squat in their misery because they can't figure out how to make a new economy happen when they can't even get a job at Starbucks or whatever the Starbucks was back then. Instead, they went to them and said, we're going to have this eminently equal system. Everybody's going to be equal. It's no longer going to have this and that, and you won't have to starve anymore. And your only job is that you got to go get more people to come because we need people to make this happen. And communism won. That's how it won, because it sold people a lie and they bought into that lie. But so many of them came to it, and so many of them could do their part by going out to another person and another person and another person. We have something that will bring love and life and happiness and preserve Western kind of Western civilization forever if we embrace it. This is something that is truly going to yield a great boon to our people, from those who are working down in blue collar levels, twisting wrenches or whatever it might be. I've been there, to those all the way up at the top of the economy, moving businesses around, checking in on their businesses once every 2 or 3 years because they have so many. It will benefit everyone. We need to be, in that respect, similar to the tactics that they used. We need to be going out and bringing more folks in, more talent, more numbers, more quality, making lives better, creating families. People, other white people with sensibilities will see this happening and they'll want to come to it. And that is the big difference. So the plans of, and I've seen this in the past, which is definitely not to say that Oliver's engaged in that sort of thing, but in the past, we have, in fact, immediately, a couple of the groups came to mind. There were groups in the white positive sphere that did focus on everything will be fixed with this form of government, or everything will be fixed with this form of economy. Look at libertarians. They essentially are the same. They're doing the same thing. They end up soaking up all of this talent. They soak up all of this energy. They soak up all of this intelligence. And then these people just get into these circles and they do nothing. They do nothing but talk to each other and preen on their ideas that they have memorized and can share, and cite all of the books and all of the authors. This is all they get good at. They don't improve white well-being. They don't create families. They don't cause children to write love letters. They don't do any of this. They just get really good at citing books and authors, and this author said that, and then they take the author's name and they turn it into a verb. They take the author's name and they turn it into a noun, and now they're really witty. When they've reached that level, I've just heard so much of this that it's just impossible to hear it again and again and again. So, but if these folks, they don't want to start another group, they want to just for fun, they want to try to build out an economy and think if it looks this way, it'll work a certain way or whatever, more power to them. I mean, I don't doubt that there's somebody in this community now who is, and maybe it's Oliver, who's going to come up with some sort of a skeleton key for some aspect of what we need in the future. But what we don't need right now is for someone to go out there and say, this has got to be about a certain government or a certain economy, and then soak up a certain way. I mean, as I say, with libertarianism, how many people have come to us from libertarianism only after years of wasting their time? I mean, if you're here and you are a libertarian and you finally saw this isn't going to save anything if we don't have white people, go ahead and speak up now, because that's a perfect example of what there's no more time for. The 2020s, Jared, we were citing you yesterday saying the new roaring 2020s, and that's going to go down in history as yours, Jared. And that's what we're going to make it. Not because there's some kind of
bring back some of the fashion too.
Yes. Not because it's to be some kind of a force outside of us, but because the Jared Georges of the world are going to make the 2020s the roaring 2020s. All right, the walkers out there are going to make it the
No
2020.
bootlegging though. No bootlegging like here.
No, we won't have
What am
to,
I
I
doing?
guess. The Fournulls. I mean, look at all how talented Fournull is, and all of the things that he did in the service of White Wellbeing, like this fast with the guy's talent. Mega rising star. We have so many talented people. The Roaring Twenties are going to be the Roaring Twenties because of these kind of good folks are going to make them the Roaring Twenties. We're going to make this our decade, and it's going to be because of us that by the end of this decade, without question, our historians are going to look back and say 2020 was the beginning.
Well, in terms of Oliver's proposition or thought experiment or whatever you'd want to call it, I guess we'll let him speak for himself. I'm sure he'll be on one of our streams soon. He's been on a lot. He's always an interesting guy to talk to, and I don't want to speak for him too much. I know, as he always does, he had a nuanced approach to this, and as I said when I asked the question, he wasn't positing that we need one government for all white people around the world. Certainly not. In fact, he was saying that that would probably be a bad idea. But he was raising some practical questions. I won't even rehearse them now because it might get us off track about things that would have to be thought about. Things that would have to be thought about. You like that? Because if we don't talk about them at all, it leaves us open. Other people selling us something. So there's a fine line to walk there.
Right.
You mentioned something though, and I haven't done like a one-off video in a while, and this would be a good one to do. I'm trying to see how my schedule is going to be in 2020 and how I want to approach my video platform life and what that's going to look like in the context of everything else that I'm doing. But something that doesn't rub me the right way, but then again, I say this with a caveat, knowing we all have different personality types and we all respond to different emotions and different data differently. So maybe this is just a byproduct of my makeup. I know not everyone is going to have as romantic and a feeling tone into their heritage that I do. But when I hear people say this very clinical formula of, well, we want libertarian type societies or small government type conservative societies, and we're only going to get that through white people, therefore, I want to preserve a white majority. Now, I'd rather someone say that than a lot of other things, don't get me wrong. But to me, that is not at all good enough. Is that something that you're going to die for? That's not something you're going to die for me. I don't wake up in the morning and say, look at the mirror and say, I'm a libertarian. I'm a right-wing person, not even right-wing. I know it's not arbitrary, right and left. I think there's an argument to be made that in broad terms, maybe they are expressions of different genetics, different brains. There could be something to that. I'm not saying that they're arbitrary, but I don't think of myself as right wing. One thing about Millennial I was saying, and I haven't watched nearly not close to all of them. On the one hand, I said before, I'm so proud and so happy to be part of this scene with people like Philosophicat, people like Semiagog, many other types who are giving us, it's just high quality content and it has a direction to it in a lot of cases. And even in the stuff that's maybe more meandering and theoretical, there's just a higher level of commitment to truth. And there are people in our movement that are really searching earnestly for the truth. And they're not afraid to go to some taboo places, of course. There you have a lot of courage. So there's a lot I can say, but briefly, I'm happy to be a part of this, and it's impressive. It's damn impressive. There's a lot of smart people in this and people who are showing good character in their earnestness. But one thing that seems to come up in a lot of the conversations in Millennial and some of the chat is that people still seem to be positing this as right and left. Is that what gets you up in the morning? Is that really what you think of yourself as first right wing? How are we going to save the right wing? What does this mean for the right wing? What is the right wing like in the 1920s? Guys, it's about your heritage, your people, your blood. I don't care about right wing. I don't think of myself as right wing. The word isn't even bouncing around my head. It's about who you are. spiritually, mentally, physically. So to go back to what I was saying a moment ago, I know there's some people who just have a more cold view of life, a more pragmatic view. And I'm not against pragmatism. I'm a very pragmatic person in a lot of ways. But to say that formula, I want a more conservative society, we need white people to maintain that, therefore I want a white majority. That's it, really? Is life that cold to you? Really? It's not about I want a society where, regardless of class, we're reading our children the same fairy tales at night because it's us. That's where we come from. We're celebrating Yule, Christmas the same way. Maybe even in a future, maybe even I'll live to see this revived, but not just in a LARPy, let's recreate the past way, in a new way that's right for us in this day and age. Maybe we'll see other things come back. Maybe we'll see May Day come back. Maybe we'll see Midsummer in more of the countries. I know it's big in Scandinavia. Whatever it looks like, our festivals, our holidays, our songs, our folk heroes, our poetry. Imagine movies made again, but not by Hollywood. Movies that really give us inspiration and really reflect our biospirit, about Robin Hood, about King Arthur, about new myths too, new poems, new music. Really? With all that, considering all that, you're going to say that it's about a formula where I just want a conservative government and white people are my way to do that, so let's preserve the white majority? That's like the lowest rung on that ladder to me. I want people to fall in love with who they are again. That's why I do what I do. That's why I have that series on Red Ice. Not just so we could have a conservative government. That's nice. And yeah, we need structures that push back against the degeneracy. I get it. But that formulaic kind of thing, that's the entry point. That's the lowest thing. I think we need to blossom our hearts and our minds into something much grander, much more inspiring.
Jared speaking from his heart, folks. I mean, this is it's a very meaningful bio-spiritual type of speech that goes beyond these superficialities of preferring this sort of governance or that sort of governance or this sort of policy. This is why I am so, I mean, I am not going to put myself in any of these different categories either. But I'm really laid back when it comes to our people being able to live their lives in a way, as long as it's not damaging our society, in a way that is works for them and doesn't ruin the society. It's not going to cause me and everyone else to have to pay for them. And so I was even saying on Go Free yesterday, Going Free, that there'll be, when we recapture our destiny, there'll be places where people will vote for it to be legal to, or if there's no voting system, whatever it is at that point, where people will be able to use marijuana like we have today, or people will be able to, or it'll be banned. There'll be places where it's banned, and that's going to be fine for people to do whatever they want. It's like I said yesterday as well, that when any addiction is bad. So having said that, if somebody wants to watch pornography in their bedrooms or wherever they are, as long as they're not sharing it with me, then let them do their thing. And what we want is to recapture our destiny so we can secure the well-being of our biospirit, our people, the actual people that bring all of this into existence. There are going to be people there of all different manner of opinion. You, with your particular likes and dislikes, are going to be able to find a place where your likes and dislikes are liked and disliked by everyone else there. You don't have to worry about living someplace where everybody's going to be different. We have said before that, and disagree with you, we've said before that recapturing our destiny presupposes that all of our different hues of Western civilization are going to be amplified, not muted, by the recapturing of the destiny. So I love saying it, and it's so true. The Brits will be more British, Southerners will be more Southern, the French will be more French, Australians will be more Australian, and it's going to be wonderful that way because we as white people like things that way. So it presupposes that. Now we have over here the couple of more pieces of information. We had the name come through, or believed to be the name of the savior down there in Texas, Jack Wilson. That may or may not be true, by the way. Everything we're saying here may or may not be true. Please check it out for yourselves. But you could always send an email directly to YouTube asking them what is true or not, and I'm sure they'll be happy to tell you. Nellis says, why economists are worse than weathermen. I love that. When I read that, I had to read it aloud. So how true is that? King, this made me laugh. King Fatah says, is that the no white guiltian approach, using the suffix Ian to make it a noun? Wonderful. That's hilarious. Classy activism, we know who you are. Writing, I'm not right wing, I'm white wing. Thanks so much. We do have 3 super chats now. Paul, the party animal, and we know who you are as well. Thank you very much, brother. Happy New Year and Happy New Decade to you over there on the gardening channel. Sorry, I asked you this. Is that the one, or do I have the wrong one? I got to check. Let me make sure. The SSII super chatting here on YouTube, $14.88. Thank you so much for that. Writing restore purpose. And then we had Miss Jess Horst super chatting $9.99. So beautiful. Yes, 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 indeed. Jared George. She underscores that, and I do as well, my friend. Smartly said. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you have anything for us? And I will get back to the other super chat. Do you have anything for us about the conversations that we had on woes, or our opinions about other conversations there? We will happily answer them before we check out tonight, but we are running close to the end. So any questions or statements, please get them in now. I think Jade Lee says, love your content. Recently got married, now trying for white babies. Bless you. That is magnificent. And you, thank you so much for your appreciation. I know I'm speaking for both myself and Jared. And please, when you have those white babies, make sure that you send Jared and I some of those very cute, chubby baby pictures. We love nothing more than to see babies being born who are going free. What are your thoughts on that, Jared?
Yes, I have a P.O. box. You can send the pictures to. We'll get that for you.
I love the baby picture. If you have chubby babies that are being born to White Wellbeing, we will happily take a look at your baby pictures. Everyone that's been sent is a joy to my heart. Okay, I think we got everything there. Yes. And then where did my other... I seem to have lost... $6. And from our friend Anon, writing, which is more important for political power? Our message reaching more of our people, or getting our people into positions of power? Jared, would you like to tackle that first and speak to...
Well, to put a simplistic wrap on it, I don't know why it's an either or. I don't really know how we could quantify where one would be a little better than the other. Obviously, if a lot of people are woken up, there are things that'll bloom and blossom from that we can't tell right now. But if it depends what you define as power, so we'll speak broadly because power comes in a lot of forms, and the most potent of that may not even be elected officials and what we're told. But having said that, yeah, power has to be taken. No one gives you power. And so a lot of people who are woken up, but there's no one and nothing that has any agency anywhere, well, you're going to have a hard time getting anything done. So really the two work in tandem. So I'm sorry if this sounds like an easy answer, but it's not a cop-out. It's my honest answer. I really can't say that there's one that would be definitively better than the other. I think we want something where they'll be working in tandem.
Yeah, well said. As far as DB, and this is DB Cooper, by the way, as far as what we can do, what I can do, what you can do, what everybody out there can do to make a change, it is the reaching out to those around you, helping them to go free. Because just like Jared pointed out, we are not going to be able to, well, let's put it this way. What if you have this really crazy, I know it's a crazy sounding scenario, I'm going to share it anyhow. But what if we had this independently funded billionaire who ran for president, and he was somehow, maybe he had a history in television, and so everybody knew about this guy, and he was a reality TV host maybe, and so many people liked him, and he was really brilliant, really just really high IQ and access to really high IQ people, knowing how to use them for his objectives. What if somebody like that ran for office, that shared our views, and then got into office? Well, what would happen is all of the things that a candidate in an office could do for us is about, at the moment right now, is about squat. So the things that Trump attempted to do, to fulfill promises that to us, of course, they seem like perfunctory efforts, but they were nonetheless efforts that were legitimately stalemated, stymied by the anti-whites. He failed at. And that would be the same scenario if we were to find another person to get into office in the current context. So office holders at the moment are really immaterial. What's material now is getting to as many people as we can to help them go free. Let me ask you all this. What would happen if by the end, or let's just say 5 years out from now, what would happen if we all, over the next 5 years, went wild helping our friends, family, and strangers where possible go free? What if we went wild and then all of those people also were helping folks to go free, and the liquidity arrived because of it? And suddenly Jared and I are not broadcasting to you from our little offices. We are broadcasting from a studio inside of a building that is housing employees like the other groups, other racial groups have, actively working, actively spreading that message with millions of dollars. And of course, there wouldn't be the waste that we have, that you see in these other organizations where you have people who are just paying themselves massive, 7-figure salaries and more. There wouldn't be that sort of waste. It would all be going back out into the community. What if we had an organizational entity like that? Well, we would have a lot more power than we have today. It would be possible then to begin to talk about things like political candidates and et cetera, because we could then punish politicians we didn't like. We could reward politicians we did like. Who, for example, wouldn't come? I mean, what percentage of the National Rifle Association wouldn't come over to participate in that organizational entity? I think it would probably be almost all of the NRA members would come over and also become members, or just abandon that organization if it's no longer properly defending the right to self-defense, and come to a group of people who will not only defend the right to self-defense for Western kind, but everything else for us as well. What would it be like if we had an organization that had the kind of money like some of these other races have, and you've seen their palatial, commodious buildings? I did use the word commodious on purpose there for the implication as well as its actual meaning. But imagine if we had that kind of power. That's genuine power. We would be able to say the, I don't know, whatever company, a mattress company, who shows every commercial they put out, it's always a non-white male with a white female. And of course, that is the promotion of white erasure. What if we could say to them, we're going to sue, we're going to create a boycott. We're going to, and we have now tens of millions of white people who are going to participate in this boycott. And then, of course, we also have the boycotts for the companies who are going to reward. And we are going to, not only that, but we're going to find out where these places do business. Are they breaking any laws where they're conducting business? We can notify the authorities of the laws. We can vex them in any number of ways. That would be the power to start making change in people's lives rather than what we have today. So
I know what the devil's advocate position is, though.
Okay. Hit me.
We would never be able to get near that huge building, employees, millions of dollars, us in a studio, legal entities putting pressure on mattress companies, etc., if we don't have anyone in power who's on our side. Because the full weight, if you think it's bad how some of our guys are in jail unfairly now for fighting back, the full weight of all of these other legal entities, government agencies and people aligned with the government but not technically in the government, et cetera, would bring all of their resources to bear to crush us before we got anywhere near that kind of structure that you're talking about now. If we didn't have sympathetic people who were in formal positions of power, that would be, if someone was debating you, that would be what they throw back at you there.
And there are such organizations today. They face regular challenges. Organizations like American Renaissance, for example, have been around for a long time on a much, obviously, infinitely smaller scale than we would like to see. And they have faced other organizations. Let's put it this way. There have been other organizations. I'm not going to mention them because I don't want the anti-whites to say, oh, he knows about these organizations, ergo he must be one of them, by simply knowing about them. But there are other organizations that have served in the white positive sphere, and they have made egregious errors that opened themselves up to the full weight and might and power of the anti-whites from different areas in government, state, and federal to come after them and have destroyed them because of it. Why is American Renaissance still here today? Even though the government, the anti-whites would like to obliterate AmRen, they would like to never see another conference. They have a great many powerful enemies. Why is it that they haven't already been obliterated? More importantly, when their resources, financial resources, are minuscule, their staff is minuscule. I think they have 4 full-time employees there, which is a magnificent thing, by the way. I laud them, and Jared Taylor is a great friend of mine. But the reason why is because they cannot go beyond what the public, the white public, will allow as acceptable given the behavior of American Renaissance. If they go beyond that, then they change the context in which they function. They change the context relative to those scores of millions of white people who will no longer find their domination over society legitimate anymore. So to go after American Renaissance, they have to look for any of the cracks that AmRen is allowing them to wedge their little crowbars into, and then they don't leave many, because if you stay on this side of the law, it's not the law that holds back the hand of the anti-whites. It's the perception that the anti-whites in power by these teeming millions of our people, it's the perception by these people that these anti-whites in power are going to restrain themselves because of the law, because of ethics, and etc. So we will be able to grow as AmRen has grown. We will be able to go beyond what AmRen has done, and we will stay on that same course, not making the same sorts of egregious errors that other organizational entities have in the past, which have enabled the anti-white or different structures, both public and private, to pursue lawsuits, lawfare, and etc., and take them down. And really, some of these people have gone to jail for the totality of their lives because of it. But that's ultimately where the fulcrum is. It's the perception of these millions. Now, if the anti-whites in power decide, okay, screw the perception of the millions, because really that's all it's ever been. What the only thing that restrains them is what the public, not what the law says, but what the public will accept as legitimate action. So if they decide to do something that the public won't accept as legitimate action, let's say we get to 5 times, 10 times the size. I know Fornell has already applied for a position there. Let's say that we get to 10 times the size of Ameren, and the anti-whites decide, wow, they're too strong. We're going to have to, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to organize things legally, structure-wise and everything in the ways that they've been done in the past, in the ways that they are easily taken down by the anti-whites. What's most important here is not a name or a particular building or a banner or none of that. That is how you end up getting flushed down the toilet by the anti-whites. What's important is the lexicon and the dialectics continue to live, and we can, it's like, oh, I'll share this. It's like riding many years when I was a child, so many years ago, there was a construction site. We went there. We had our skateboards at the time. We were riding skateboards, and there were these I-beams that were laid across this concreted area, and they were, up off the ground about this high, and I don't know, maybe 5 feet wide of them. And I came up with this game trick, and we all did it. A couple of the guys fell down a couple times, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. It was downhill. You would ride your skateboard toward this. And I guessed. I didn't even know. I can't believe it worked. I just guessed. I said, I bet that if I ride my skateboard down toward these I-beams and I jump straight up in the air, that my momentum and the skateboard's momentum will carry us together, the skateboard under the I-beams. I can't see it. And as I go over the I-beams and the ground comes into view again, the skateboard should be there, and then I'll just put my feet back on top of it. And everybody said, no, you're going to break your neck. So I tried it, and fortunately, I got near the I-beams. I leapt off of the skateboard, flew through the air. It was the most remarkable feeling, just flying through the air at speed and looking down and kind of in this poised position. And then the edge of the I-beams go by. There's the concrete. And then all of a sudden, there's the skateboard, and set my feet right back down on it. It was a hell of a lot.
And you landed on it?
I landed on. We did it again and again and again. It was just so magnificent, the fun we had. But that is how, and the only reason I tell that story is because that is how this dialectics and this lexicon are going to work. Because we're going to be able, if because of lawfare, if because of any other means, anything that happens that the anti-whites can do, they come after us, if to destroy me personally or whatever it is, we will be able to jump off of the dialectics, the lexicon. They will continue moving forward. We will continue moving forward. And then when and where possible, we will set our feet right back down on that entity and keep moving. It's got to be like this. It's got to be protean, because if it's not, the anti-whites are going to be able to wrap their hands around it and choke the life out of it, as they have so many things. So we will have folks in place. We will walk the line that needs to be walked. And if the anti-whites know this, if the anti-whites decide, it doesn't matter, we think that 10 times the size of Ameren is too much, we're going to go ahead and we are going to break the perception of the public that we abide by the law, and we're going to absolutely crush these people. Let them do that, because the moment that they do that, and this is, it's for those out there who get a little, I guess, squeamish at that. The reality is that this is the real conflict. This is the jungle. This is where the panther is lying in wait in the darkness, with muscles that are like lightning. And that's the world we live in, the reality we live in. So it could happen that they come and they crush us. And if it happens, it'll be a great thing, because even though or whatever happens, I'm obviously not trying to be a martyr or anything like that, but whatever happens, they wouldn't make me a martyr. They would rather slander me some way and then put me under a jail somewhere for the rest of poison me for the rest of my life or whatever it is. But if that happens, then they will have changed this context in a way that will open up so many opportunities for us. It'll be like Swiss cheese. There'll be so many holes for us to go through. The public will absolutely say this is out of control. They're already on the verge of saying that with this impeachment stuff. It will radically change the context in a way that will favor us. And I think my hunch is that the anti-white elites who are in charge, they know that. That's why they continue with the propaganda. If they didn't, if there wasn't this offsetting power, they wouldn't bother with the propaganda. They would just say, okay, you all are slated for extinction by us. Too bad, too sad. Now, they know that there is this offsetting power. That's why they continue to propagandize. And I think even though there would be anti-whites who would like to come in and crush a white positive organizational entity 10 times the size of AmRen, smarter ones, anti-white elites would step up and say, no, don't you dare. We're not going to allow that to happen. We have to find another way, a smarter way to take them down. It can't be the way that you want to do it now, for those reasons I just articulated. So trust me, folks, let me also say for the record, Jared, George, and myself are never going to commit suicide. We are never going to harm ourselves in any way.
So psychologically robust.
Yes. We are so sound.
I've had people who are studying psychology tell me you're one of the most psychologically healthy people I've ever met.
Yes.
I'm a fulfilled person. I love myself. I like myself. I feel a great sense of purpose. What Jason just said.
We are very happy.
Please save that clip. And
yes,
everyone keep it on a hard drive, just in case.
Keep that clip, please.
We're happy.
We're very. Look at the smile on that man's face. He is very happy. The great Roy Danton is here.
Look at everything that we do. Is that the artifacts of a sad person or a twisted person?
No, absolutely.
I don't have any strange fetishes.
Nope. Completely. All the normal fetishes, but none of the strange ones.
Yes. I like women that look like women, that are grown women. I have to tell you, and now I get into territory of if anyone's trying to be a detractor, doth he protest too much? But this is just because this is after hours and it's more personal and rambling and, well, hopefully not directionless, but it's less planned. It's impromptu. So I'll tell you this. I don't know if I've ever said this to you in private, Jason. I think I have, though. Tell me if it sounds familiar. Even when I was a teenager, teenage girls, my peers, obviously if one was attractive, it's not like I didn't find them attractive. But even at that age, I was attracted to women who had matured, who would be in their late 20s, early 30s. I was attracted to that even when I was a teenager. When you hear about this fetishization of young girls, some of these sickos, it's disgusting for all kinds of reasons. But I don't get this thing. I don't get that that's a whole psychology, I think if you're a psychologically healthy person, a psychologically mature person, then you're a fully developed adult in all ways, fully developed mentally, spiritually, physically, is what attracts you. Also, there's a note there. Maybe this is cause for another stream altogether, because I know we're at the end of tonight's stream. Is we all have to look out for it in different ways, but in the particular way this manifests in men, the whole, well, as long as she shows the signs of fertility and looks good. Yeah, really? It's like you marry someone, you're going to be with them for decades of your life. You better make sure you can hold a conversation with them. What do you do when you're driving in a car together for 3 hours? What do you do when you're walking down the street? You're not always having sex. And that's going to wax and wane. You're going to go through cycles of physical attraction and lust. We all know that it doesn't stay exactly the same. I do believe there are ways to keep that alive, the flame alive, but it's not going to be like it It's not going to be like it was in the first 6 months the whole time, every single day. We know that, right? Or passing on intelligence to your kids. I see a woman who might be physically attractive, but doesn't really have much to say, and she's just into her shoes and her bags. If we have a daughter, you see mothers and daughters take after mothers so much. I don't want my daughter to be like that. Look at who I am. Look at what I do. Go look at my website. Do you think that's not all it is? You can't. You have to develop yourself so that you're not attracted just to that. Just to that's the glitz. That's falling for just the shiny things. How some guys might criticize women for being materialistic and say, oh, they're like shiny things, gold and diamonds and things like that. But you're being the same thing if all you want is the TNA, right? Everyone wants an attractive partner, someone who's on at least, in their range. We've talked about that. You talk about that a lot. But I'm turned off by a woman who can't hold a conversation, who isn't a good communicator, who doesn't have any depth and intelligence. And I told this story at one of the first after parties that we ever did in the spring of 2018. But I remember a particular story where a waitress, and I wasn't at this institution, I wasn't at this establishment. I've never been to this establishment. But I met a woman who turned out to be a waitress at the Penthouse Club. Okay, she wasn't one of the strippers, but she was a waitress. And you would imagine even their waitresses are going to be attractive, at least in the way that, the masses think, right?
Mm.
And I remember her talking to me at a bar, and I was just being polite, but I wasn't really giving her much. A lot of guys, an attractive woman, it's like, they can't not get into that stupid banter, flirty thing. Control yourself. Have presence of mind. I knew the kind of woman she was. I overheard her talking about going to Vegas and gambling. It's not a type of woman I'm ever going to spend time with. And I could see her getting annoyed that I wasn't hitting on her, that I wasn't flirting with her. And she asked me if I had a girlfriend. I didn't at the time, so I said no. I'm not in a serious relationship. And she tries to engage a little bit more. I'm polite, but I'm also talking to I was around other people. I was talking to other people. I wasn't blowing her off. You know me, I wouldn't be rude if it was as you really needed to be and protect your time, have to set a boundary. But I wasn't playing ball with her. And then this is the big tell. Out of nowhere, without precedent, she goes, "Are you gay?" Like she was pissed off that I'm not flirting with her. Guys, I tell you, there's a power there, and not about power plays. It's not about power plays, but there is a power when you remain present and you don't just become, oh, she's pretty. Yeah, I'm gonna goof. I'm gonna be a flirt, or you can try to be tough. There's the banter flirting, but there's also like the cool guy flirting. You just get into a mode. It's like your lizard brain takes over. Make her prove that she has character, that she has intelligence, that she has something to her. Value what you have as well. And of course, I could say the same about women as well, and I do. I love all of you, but I'm speaking as a man to men right now, or maybe as a man to boys who need to become men. So, just a little food for thought there.
And thank you, good sir, for that food for thought. We have, I guess, just a few more minutes. We read the last couple super chats, and we just had a story that was brought to my attention by Muktuk, and it is such an outrage. I'll read it in just a moment, but we have something else I have to share. What a miraculous and amazing thing. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Jade Lee, writing here. I was buying Going Free on your website when I came upon the ad for White Date, on which platform I met my husband. Thank you for all you do and have done. You are a great influence. Well, thank you so much.
That's great. And thank you to Liv, who started White Date, who's been on our show many times.
Precisely. That is magnificent. How much more beautiful is it going to be when she sends those baby pictures? At one of our sites, went to another of our live site and found her husband going free. That's why the babies are going to be here. This is what is truly beautiful. And those babies, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be reared in a way that they are inoculated to the mean pathogens around them. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. How magnificent is that? Now we have over here, I know we have a super chat on YouTube. I'll get to that. I'll have to find it. The great Roy Danton on entropy. There are a few people over there. And super chatting $10, my dear friend. Thank you for that. Speaking of the next decade, I just checked this little app, and January 10th, 2:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the first full moon of the new decade. It doesn't matter where on the planet you are, just need to adjust the time zone. Isn't that interesting? Thank you so much for that. We will keep an eye open for the first full moon of 2020, the new decade. It might be something exciting might happen. Mestizo in the questions widget writing, is everyone looking forward to the upcoming 20s? Happy new decade. Well, a happy new decade to you, my friend. And we definitely are over here in service to White Wellbeing. Let me scroll up and I'm going to take a quick look at this story. I might have to jump over to the other. There we go. William super chatting $20. Thank you, my dear friend, and saying a lot to the anti-whites, even the likes of Cross Eyes on the right, who tried and failed once again. Valiant attempt to take down service to White Wellbeing, to try to slander it as something other than what it is, having to quote me and not being able to persuade anyone because he has to quote me. Can you believe this guy? He says that they should fight to protect white children. What a monster. All right. I think that's all over here, but I'll check as Jared gives his final thoughts to make sure we didn't miss any of the super chats elsewhere. And let's take a look at this story because this is really interesting. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention because, folks, have we been saying that things are changing? Has 2019 not been? I said at the very end of 2018, 2019 would be the year that the first rays of the Western sunrise would crest our horizon. Has it not been? Elite School refuses to accept £1 million gift, a donation, £1 million after the donor. Now I want you all to not see this for what you initially as it hits you as. After the donor says it can only be spent on white little boys.
From poor backgrounds. I saw the headline. I think Daughter of Albion shared this, and I saw it earlier.
So the important thing here is not don't get bent out of shape over the hypocrisy. That's not the thing to think here. That they think that they'll accept money that's going to just Jews. They'll accept money that's going to just blacks. They'll accept money that's going to just Arabs or just girls. But set money aside for white little boys, and they reject it. Don't get mired down in this ain't it hypocrisy nonsense. The important thing, I'm not going to wake up the neighbors by yelling. The important thing is that there is a donor, and that probably means there is more than one, who says enough is enough. £1 million for white little boys from poor backgrounds.
I noticed the same. Let's not lose sight of the fact that there's a guy out there or a woman with £1 million to give for this.
Yeah.
Send them our way. Maybe we'll have that big studio in that building this time next year.
Well, two UK schools have turned down large donations over concerns the money was only destined for poor white children. Ladies and gentlemen, our people are rallying. The soil, as I have said, is getting richer by the day because of anti-whiteism coming out from behind the mask of the mispretexts. They no longer are able to manipulate our masses the way they were able to manipulate them. Why? Because we so often, perhaps it's genetic, project who and what we are into those around us. And we simply cannot believe that someone could be as diabolical as anti-whites truly are. And as a consequence, they believe these little pretexts. They believe it's about love. They believe it's about equality. It must be. Some measure of it must be. It's not going to be hidden any longer. The anti-whites are drunk on their power. They are drunk with their hatred and the demonic spirits inside of them that are driving them forward to inflict all forms of injury. And you now have, think of this, a donor or more here with more than £1 million who is looking for some place to put that money. That means there are other wealthy individuals of this level and other levels that are now looking for alternatives to the old alma mater, the old governmental structures, the old economic structures, the old religious structures. They are turning away from them all because they can see that these entities are corrupt and anti-white. They might not have the vocabulary, but let me tell you what's going to happen. There's going to be, and this is what we've been talking about for a while, this is what we're moving toward. What did I say? I said we have to build our numbers. We have to demonstrate that we are a success. And then those white people who have those millions, who have those billions, and who are cowards relative to us, who are ready to stand up as courageous in an era that's able to tell the world that we are evil for our love, they will finally come out of their cowardice with their money, with their resources, with their connections, with their human capital. And let me ask you this, where will this doctrine go? Where will this doctrine go when somebody with £1 million to give away, where will this doctrine go with that sort of support? Where will it go when somebody who has £10 million to give away, £50 million to give away? The sky is the limit. When these ideas walk through the halls with dignity and grace and strength and purpose of these palatial palaces of our wealthiest members of our people, there will be no stopping us from recapturing our destiny. Those will be my closing words. Jared, what are your final thoughts? And I'll see if we have any other super chats with this wonderful night with all of these good people. What a high note to end on. A big happy new year to you all. I'm sure the odds that we'll talk again are very slim, and most importantly, a happy new decade. I expect to see you all sharing heroic stories in this coming year and the next 10. Jared, please.
What are you doing, New Year's? I love that song. Well, I do wish you all well. That story about the £1 million, yeah, we can't get into the whole, oh, look at the hypocrisy. Is that hypocrisy bad kind of thing? Yeah, that content was being made years ago. It's tiresome. You don't need to say, look at the hypocrisy. It's so bad. But share it with friends and family. That story could wake up a lot of people. So please, let's use that story as leverage, as a in point with some friends and family. That's a great one. But yeah, Jason, this was a tremendous year. Now we're going to really reflect on things, I guess, when we do our anniversary show in February, of course.
Right.
But 2019, excuse me. I'm already ahead of the curve thinking it's 2020. 2019 was a tremendous year for us. It was our first full year doing the after party, full calendar year. Although we almost had most of 2018. We started in February of 2018. But we grew by leaps and bounds. We had some amazing content, some amazing interviews. We also took the bull by the horns, and a lot of this is because of your support. And on October, we had been planning this since the late summer, but in October, we announced the afterparty.tv. That's huge. New projects have come out, and we've really laid the groundwork, the architecture that we can now grow into in 2020 and beyond. And doing it with all of you, of course, as I like to remind people often, we have a community page on the afterparty.tv for all of you out there, for people that are making music and original content. So we're all in this together. I am very grateful for this year. It's been amazing. And this is just a wrap up right now, so I'll keep it brief. Again, maybe there'll be occasion for more things like that and to really suss out some more details about the year. But suffice it to say, it's been amazing. And I love you, Jason. I love working with you. And I love all of you out there listening. I'm so proud of what we've done, and we're just getting started. I know a lot of people say that, but we really are. We really are getting started. You know, when this began, a lot of that first year was just trying to do a show a week and trying to book people and trying to come up with some good questions. And then it became more of a rhythm. You get into a rhythm, it became part of a lifestyle. And then a lot of new projects, as I was mentioning, blossomed out of that in this year of 2019. So we thank you all, and thank you all for being part of this. And yeah, I always like to remind people the newsletter. I know there's some housekeeping stuff, but please do sign up on the newsletter on our site, because if social media went away, that's really the way that we have to contact you. And a lot of you should be able to watch these streams when they're live on our site on the afterparty.tv watch live now page. So please check that out. We're still working out a few bugs with Entropy. Entropy is busy, of course, developing their interface to work with other video platforms besides YouTube and Twitch. That's really important as well. So check us out on all of the different platforms we're on. If you go to the Watch Live Now page, you can see where we usually broadcast to. And then we have our own sites, nowhiteguilt.org for Jason, and mine is thegreatorder.com. So that catalog of things that everything that we do. The afterparty.tv is all the media, all these shows and videos and things of that nature. But anything else that doesn't quite fit into that, like let's say when I write a poem, something like that's a perfect example of what's going to be on thegreatorder.com on my own site. So please do check both and share it with people. We know that's important. And I'm sure there'll be something that I forgot when we click off there, as there always is. But all of you who are regulars, if you guys know, the moderators know, if there's something important to share, please do so. But we look forward to seeing you in 2020. I think you know that. It's been amazing. I don't need to keep belaboring the point. So I'll just finish by saying again how thankful I am, how great it is to be doing this. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And we'll see you all in 2020. We'll make it an amazing year and an amazing decade.
Well said, brother. I love you as well. I love working with you. I love working with all of these good folks in our community. It's just, and what a splendid way to end 2019 with all of these success stories that we're reading on yesterday on Going Free. And then we have Jada Lee with her story tonight. And then we read about this at the very end, hear this story about a donor or donors putting up £1 million specifically for white in this age. I mean, this is enormous. This is not like an age ago where people could put money up specifically for X, Y, or Z. You are essentially, by standing up publicly saying there's this much money for this group, that means that there are circles that this individual or individuals are in that find it acceptable, or otherwise they would have been totally ostracized. They are putting money up in a way, in an age that they would be absolutely burned at the stake and easily run off as heretics for having done so. So there is more there than £1 million. I hope you all are able to see that. And a big thank you to everyone over on D Live who have contributed some of those Lino points. It looks like we had Nordic Prince with some ninja diamonds. Thank you so much. Saying things like always respect you helping us. I will not give in. We'll push harder because it's worth it. Thank you so much for that. Others.
Well, I can tell you quickly what I look forward to in 2020 is driving my Ninja Guineas around the racetrack from all of these D Live donations.
Well, precisely. We need all those Ninja Guineas. They're definitely going to be put to use.
The hottest style of car in the next decade, the Ninja Guinea. Not the Lamborghini, the Ninja Guinea.
Precisely. It doesn't come out of Italy. It's somewhere else.
I might drive it through the Italian Alps, though. That'd be nice.
You could show it off. And
I don't think I'd ever waste money on an exotic sports car, but there are companies that let you like rent them for a weekend.
Yes.
I think that's a much wiser. Sometimes renting does make sense versus owning, and this is one of those cases. You know, just take a little trek through Europe for a couple of days in an exotic car, and then you give it back. You don't have to maintain it, and worry about the insurance, and worry about damaging it. This ridiculously expensive car.
Yeah.
You have the experience of driving a special car like that through beautiful places. That's something I would do. Not with super chat money, by the way. I would never do that with super chat money. I do that with my own money.
Probably afford a lug nut on one of those things.
We're talking about renting. We're talking about renting for a little joyride.
Thank you all very much. We will definitely be back. You'll see me again on Wednesday, the 1st. Happy New Year to those who it's already, I guess, the New Year for. And happy new decade. I will be back on the 1st with Mark Collette over there on PWR, and we'll see how many of you all show up. Have a safe night. Don't get liquored up, or if you do, be someplace safe. Have that designated driver or whatever it's going to be for you. That the way you live life. Love to everybody, the Seaver, all of the mods, everybody who has done work over the year. And we're obviously going to be, like Jared said, be talking about more of that on our birthday party in February. But it's just been a fantastic time. And I could not be more optimistic at this point. And I hope you all are as well. Let everybody else bitch and moan about how terrible everything is. We are building something. We are building something that is getting the attention of a great many people out there. And before you know it, that if £1 million is showing up at these schools specifically for poor white children, and the donor obviously would be known, it's not a far stretch to imagine that a bag of money shows up at the front door. And we'll be looking for it, though, if you're listening now. But I thank you, everybody, for being here. Jay Easom with the joke of this will be the decade that the trench coats fell off. Exactly. They're coming out from behind the trench coats. But thank you all.
Yeah, it's kind of combining two things we talked about on Millennial. Something about flashers, right? You were using a metaphor, and then I said the last decade was the decade the mask fell, the anti-white mask fell, and this decade we're about to end.
And now it's the trench coats fell off, and we can see the anti-whites in all of their slovenly ugliness, as orbicular and diseased as they truly are, sores of worse than leprosy, coursing.
They're not the kind of people you want to see opening their trench coat if nothing's under there. I
imagine many of those who open their trench coats are. And on that note, we will see you all.
That's how we're ending 2019. That's how we can do 2019 that way. Let's do another hour. What do you say?
See you all in 2021. Happy New Year and happy new decade. And we're going to continue the service to White Wellbeing. Love you all. See you next time.
Happy New Year.